Hi everyone, welcome back to Intermediate Ukulele with me, Matt Stead. In today's video, we're going to have a look at transposing songs and pieces of music. I'm going to explain what transposition is. I'm going to tell you why you might use it and how it can be a really brilliant skill to have in your arsenal to do. We're going to look at two very simple methods to allow you to do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it with both chords and melodies. Let's take a look. So really simply, transposing a piece of music is when you take the key of a piece of music. Think of the key as like the palette that an artist would use to paint a picture. Well, as musicians, we have a palette too. So it's all the chords or notes that fit within a particular key. And by transposing a piece of music, you either take the pitch of all those notes and chords higher or lower. It's as simple as that. But of course, that leads us to the why. What's the point in taking all of those chords and notes and rising or falling them in terms of pitch? Well, there are loads of reasons. The most common, and the first one that pops into a lot of people's minds, is if a song is in a key that's difficult to sing for a particular person. Take something like Hound Dog, quite often played in the key of C. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. It's really difficult for me. You're nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. I could just about reach the notes, but it's a bit of a strain. If I take that down from C to a G beneath it, you ain't nothing but a hound dog, much more comfortable, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. So we can use it to change the key for the singer to make it easier for them to sing in a lower or a higher pitch. Another reason for transposition is when the melody doesn't fall within the range of ukulele. And this is particularly useful if you're arranging a piece from another instrument where it would fit. I'll give you an example. If I play Joy to the World in a key of B flat, watch what happens when I reach the lowest note. I can't play it. There's one note lower than that. But I can't get to a low B because the lowest note I can play on my ukulele is this low C, unless I've got a low G fitted. So that's a problem. I can't play that melody easily in the key of B flat. If I was to take it up a whole step in the key of C, there it is. Now it fits within the range of the ukulele and I can hit the lowest note of the piece easily. And often overlooked, but I think one of the most brilliant reasons for transposing music is that some keys on ukulele are much easier to play in than others. Have you ever been thumbing through your songbook looking for a piece to play, and you see a piece of music that you love, but some of the chords are really tricky and you just think, nah, I'm going to skip that, I'm going to move on. And it's such a shame because it could be a really nice piece. Well, if you were to transpose that to another key, you might find that the chords are much easier to play. Take a really common guitar progression, E, B, C sharp minor, A. It's just a progression that comes up all the time in guitar music because it's very easy to play in the key of E on guitar. Now those chords, E, C sharp minor, quite tricky on ukulele, and whilst I think it's good to learn all these, sometimes to make a song easier for you or your ukulele group to play, it might be worth transposing it. Believe it or not, those chords in the key of C are simply C, G, A minor and F. So much easier. And I'll give you an example later. I'll show you how to physically change those chords and I'll explain a little bit more. One of the easiest ways to transpose music is using our old friend, the chromatic scale, like a slide ruler. I'll explain in a minute in a lot more detail. Remember, the chromatic scale is all 12 notes that we can play in the Western world, and it's easy to remember because it's just A, and we keep going through the alphabet until we get to G. All that we've got to remember is that every note has a sharp or a flat after it, like A, A sharp, B, apart from B and C and E to F. It's just a quirk of the way Western music is divided. I remember it totally ridiculous as because elephants fart. If you just remember that in between B and C and E and F there's no sharps and flats, you can have this chromatic scale in your mind. But I've drawn it out here to help us anyway. So what we do is, first of all, we take some chords and we work out where they are on the chromatic scale at the moment, or we just simply start with them. Let's take an example. Here's a nice example. Here are the opening chords to the song White Sandy Beach. Now, one of my favourite Hawaiian bands play this in the key of A, but it's much too low for me to sing. Let's have a shot just so you can hear. I saw you in my dreams. Sound like Barry White, don't I? We were walking hand in hand on a white sandy beach of Hawaii. So what if I want to transpose that up a pitch? What we do is we find chords that are higher or lower than the ones that the original is in, and we shift each one of these chords along by the same amount. Now, two things we need to know first. This is just semantics really, but know that if we have one movement along this chromatic scale, we call it half a step. It just helps me to explain if you understand that. And if we move two movements along the chromatic scale, we call it a whole step. Sometimes that'll involve sharps and flats, like here, C to C sharp to D. Sometimes notes won't have sharps or flats in between, but wherever we still have two movements, like B to C sharp, we call that a whole step. Wherever there's only one movement, whether or not it's to a sharp or not, E to F here, a half step, A to A sharp, a half step. And as long as you move all of these chords along by the same amounts of whole or half steps, you can transpose really easily. I'll show you what I mean. So the original chord in this song is A, but as we found, that's kind of too low for me to sing, right? So let's move it up. Say, let's try moving it right up to the key of C. So that means if the original key was A and we're moving it to C, therefore the first chord would have to be a C because we're in the key of C now. Here's where the slide rule bit comes in. The movement from A to C is 1, 2, 3. 3 half steps, isn't it? A to A sharp is a half step, A sharp to B is a half step, and B to C is another half step. So we can think of it as 3 half steps or 1.5 steps, right? So every one of these changes, we want to make 1.5 steps. I'll call them 1.5 steps to make it easier. And all we need to do is transfer that to the rest of the chords. It's that easy. Again, I'll show you what I mean. So D now, we need to take up by the same amount of steps, 1.5. So every time I play a D in the song, I'm going to take it up 1.5 steps, because that's 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. Half, 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 or 1.5. So because I've taken D up 1.5 steps, every time I play D in the song, I would replace it with an F. Let's have a look at another one. The next chord's D minor, and I love this example because it's really handy. If there is a quality of the chord after it, so instead of a D, it's a D7 or a D minor, we just do exactly the same process we do, and we add that minor on the end as well. So if D up 1.5 step is F, D minor up 1.5 step must be F minor. You just carry over the minor. Make sense? So we're nearly there. Then we're back to A. Now again, this is another good example because if there's one you've already done, you don't have to work it out anymore. You can just apply the same thing. So we knew that A goes to C. This A must go to this C. So now the opening chords I have in the key of C are C. I saw you in my dreams. We were walking hand in hand, F, on a white F minor sandy beach of Hawaii. A lot easier to sing. So there we go. I've just transposed the key up a little bit to make it much easier to sing just by using the chromatic scale. And exactly the same thing applies to melodies as well as chords. So if you have a melody that you're playing and you need to take it up or down, we can apply exactly the same reasoning. Let's give it a go. Let's take that Joy to the World that I showed you in the introduction, which goes from a high B flat down to a low B flat that we can't reach. So at the moment it's B flat, A, G, F, E flat, D, C, B flat. Now I can't reach that low B flat. This needs to be a low B flat. I can approximate it by playing a high B flat, but it's not the same. We need that low note, not the high note. So let's try taking these notes and transposing it up a whole step to see if that makes it easier and it allows us to get that low note. Let's have a try. So we start with a B flat and we're going to try transposing this into C again, okay? It's up half a step, which should allow us to reach that low note. So every time there's a B flat, I can play a C. So that low B flat down the bottom becomes a low C, so I can do 2 for the price of 1. Then we just apply the same thing. B flat to C, here's B flat, B, C is 2 half steps, or easier to think of as a whole step, okay? So we need to take all of these notes up a whole step to match. Okay, simples, right? So A up a whole step becomes B. G up a whole step becomes A. F up a whole step becomes G. Here's an interesting one, E flat, same thing still occurs. E flat here, up a whole step becomes F. D up a whole step becomes E. And C up a whole step becomes D. Now we've transposed that whole little melody into the key of C from B flat. And the cool thing about that is now, if I play through those notes, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, the low note, because it's that low C, I can reach on the ukulele. I couldn't reach a low B flat without having a low G string, but I can reach the low C because it's within the range of my ukulele. Cool, huh? Simple transposition. If a song isn't fitting in the range of the uke, just shift it up or down and you'll be able to find a way to make it fit. Another great resource for transposition is the circle of fifths. This is a really amazing diagram which helps explain some of the most common chord and melody progressions in the world. I've done a separate video all about it where I go into a lot of detail, but today I just want to use it as a tool. I'll do a link in the description to that other video for you. All I want you to know is that some of the most common chord progressions that we use in modern music are shown in different orders on this diagram. One of the most common B sections from a piece of music is where we go backwards around the circle of fifths. So let's take 5'2" Eyes of Blue, and one of the songs that we've already learned on the course. The chorus of 5'2" Eyes of Blue is E7, A7, D7, G7, and then it goes back to C. And the last chord we play is actually which key it's in, this C. So E7, A7, D7, G7, C. 2 measures of this one, 2 measures, 2 measures, 2 measures, and back to this one. Let's just play it so we can remind ourselves. Chords will be on the screen, coming after 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you run into a 5'2" covered with D7, diamond rings, and all those things, bet your life it isn't her, but could she love, etc, etc. So if we wanted to take that series of chords and try them in another key, all we've got to do is create exactly the same pattern, just starting from a different place. So in the key of C, we started with E7, A7, D7, G7, back to C. We just went backwards, right? Notice we jump from here to here. So we do the same thing. We would start from D and we would jump round the same amount, which would bring us round to G flat or F sharp. Then we come back to B, E, A and D. So we would play, let's call it an F sharp 7, B7, E7, A7 and back to D. The same chords but in a different key. Just followed the same pattern but just started from a different place. Now this chord progression gives us with a bonus learning opportunity. Now if this all goes a bit over your head because you didn't watch the video 2 weeks ago, don't worry, just follow the chord boxes on screen. But we can work out an F sharp 7 by using movable chords that we learned before. I'll show you what I mean. So let's start with an E7, just go with me on this, which we would play like this in the normal way, 1, 2, 0, 2. But remember, if we want to turn it into a movable chord, we need to use our index finger or first finger to bar or cover a string. So we can't use these 3 fingers. So let's try playing an E7 with first, second and third fingers, just like that. Now, if we want to turn that into a movable shape, all we need to do is move that shape upwards and bar the fret before it using our index finger. Or in this case, because we're covering 3 strings, we just need this finger to cover whichever string isn't being covered at the moment, which is the third one down, the E string. And as if by magic, we've taken an E7 chord and turned it into an F7 chord. 1 movement or half a step along the chromatic scale. Remember, with that chromatic scale, half a step or 1 movement is 1 fret. If we want that F sharp 7 that we need, we just take this F7 up 1 more movement along that chromatic scale, 1 more fret. F sharp 7. So there we found our F sharp 7 as a movable chord. We've taken an E7, we've moved it up and we've either barred or covered the string. For F7, taken it 1 more for F sharp 7. So there's our first chord. If you run into a 5 for 2. Next up, we need a B7. Well, we're going to use exactly the same principle. We're going to work out how to do a barred B7 by starting with an A7 and moving it up. Now, we would normally play an A7 like this with our first finger, right? But let's try and leave this first finger handy. So let's start that A7 with your second finger. Now we can cover the fret in front of it and move it up. And that would give us a B flat 7, because we've gone from A to A sharp or B flat, same note. And then if we went 1 further, a B7, A7, A sharp 7, B7, movable chords. So simple if you know a chord nearby that you can turn into a movable chord. So let's try putting that together. So just as a reminder, back to the circle of fifths. F sharp 7, B7, E7, A7 and back to D. We're following the same process we did with C, but we're just starting here like this. Let's give it a go. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you run into a 5 for 2, covered with a diamond rings and all those things, but your life, it isn't her, but could she love? There we go, absolutely fantastic. We've just used the circle of fifths to change the key and transpose a song from C to D. Can we just try one more example just to bed that in? Let's have a look at it in the key of F. So when we did it in the key of C, we went round to E and then just travelled backwards, didn't we? And when we went to D, we went round to F sharp and travelled backwards. Same process again. This is why circle of fifths is so handy. We can start with F, we can go round to A and travel backwards. So this progression in the key of F will be A7, D7, G7, C7, F. Now the reason I wanted to do it in F is to show you that if it was originally in D, those original chords were quite tough, weren't they? F sharp 7 to B7. I had to teach them you. We had to do movable chords. They're quite difficult. So if the song was in that key and we found that tricky, we could change it to C or F. And these have easier chords because in the key of F, A7 you probably know, D7 you probably know, G7 you probably know, C7 you probably know, and F you know. Let's have a go at it. Okay, chords will be on the screen. After 4 in the key of F, we're going to start with A7. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you run into a 5 for 2, covered with diamond rings and all those things, bet your life it isn't her, but could she love? Much easier chords, right? That just highlights why sometimes it's worth transposing songs to make it easier to play. And you know, it's good to learn all these chords anyway, but say you wanted to arrange that for a uke group and you're worried that many of the players would struggle with those chords. Transpose it, it's easier for everyone. Just to finish off, let's have a look at those chords in that example I gave at the start, where we had a progression which is really easy to play on guitar in the key of E, where we had E, B, C sharp minor and A. Now I'm going to play that on the ukulele just so you can hear, but notice they're quite tricky chords, so it's going to be quite tough, but just have a listen. We have E to start, B, C sharp minor and an A. Probably quite recognisable as a progression. It's used loads in modern pop music, but tricky to play on the ukulele in the key of E. Well, what if we apply the same principle that we've been learning all along? Now, of course, you could use the chromatic scale ruler way of doing this, but let's have a look at it on the circle of fifths. Notice we have a simple pattern. It's like a triangle. We have E, then we go clockwise around to the next one, to B. We come backwards to the minor underneath where we started, C sharp minor, and then we go over to the A. Okay, let me put that closer again so you can see. So we're going clockwise, backwards to the minor, and backwards again to A. E, B, C sharp minor, A. All quite tricky chords. Notice I had to do a lot of bar chords to complete that progression. Let's have a look at it in the key of C. Notice that I said some keys are a lot easier to play in. Now you might think it would be good to learn these chords, and I do think it would be good. It's absolutely brilliant to build up your chord knowledge. But say you're arranging this piece for a local uke group or another player who wasn't as confident, it would be really nice to try transposing it to another key to make it easier. So let's have a look at it. We're going to start from C, clockwise around here, which gives us a G, backwards to the minor underneath where we started, A minor, and then over to F. So exactly the same shape. Clockwise, back to the minor, back again. Just like we did here, clockwise, back to the minor, back again. So just following these patterns on the circle of fifths, we can rearrange it. So now we have C, G, A minor, and F. And if we give that a little play, so much easier. C, G, A minor, and F. And that is a perfect example of why transposition can be your friend. So I've included a link to a downloadable and printable version of the circle of fifths. Just follow the description, click on the links, and you'll see there's a place where you can download and print your own version of the circle of fifths. What I would love you to do for a piece of homework, if you have time, is take 2 simple pieces of music. Choose a couple of songs which only have 3, 4 or 5 chords, nothing too difficult. And I want you to try transposing them to a different key using both the chromatic scale way of doing things and the circle of fifths. It will be a really good experience into working out how to recognise patterns on here, but also how to use the chromatic scale way of thinking. Well, I hope that really demystified things for a few of you, and really more than anything, I want to show you how useful a skill it is being able to transpose music. It's a really, really key thing to learning ukulele and any form of musical instrument, really.